Education is considered as an important tool for resolving social problems and maximizing individual well-being. India, being a developing nation, needs the support of government to provide the education at the basic level. Education in India is provided by the public sector as well as the private sector, with control and funding coming from three levels: central, state and local. Keeping the profitability in mind, private organizations show interest in running schools in urban areas only. Unfortunately, except the government agencies, the other players do not take interest in running schools in rural areas. Hence, it becomes the responsibility of government to provide education in underdeveloped and developed areas as well. Besides providing education for large number of children, government agencies plays a major role in imposing control over private institutions to safeguard the interest of people and to maintain the quality of education. Both government, central and state, and non-governmental organizations plays a major role in educational administration and supervision. Before independence, there was no proper or conscious education development plan due to lack of interest of British government. The system of rule called diarchy, introduced in 1921, and provincial autonomy, introduced in 1937, resulted in transfer of education to Indian control. During that period, though the central government and control over the province, however, it did not exercise any control directly. The local authorities were first placed as in charge of primary education. Gradually, the powers were transferred to Indian people and they were permitted to develop the program on their description. Post-independence, the central and state government were handed over the responsibility of providing education to people. To ensure the proper implementation of educational programs, they are divided into three categories. State programs. The programs under the state are eligible for central financial assistance, and the responsibilities of executing them largely rest with the states. Centrally sponsored programs. These programs are designed on the suggestions of central ministry and are applicable throughout India. These are also implemented through the state governments like the scheme in the state sector. Central schemes. These are worked out and implemented by the central ministry. Presently, in India, the schools are managed by three agencies: government, local authorities and voluntary organizations. The government not only finances the government schools but also supports schools being run by local and voluntary organizations to a large extent. There are various other agencies also which looks into the administration of schools at national level. They are as follows: Ministry of Human Resource and Development, HRD, initially known as Ministry of Education. University of Grants Commission, UGC. The National Council of Educational Research and Training, NCERT. The Ministry of Human Resource Development in India is responsible for the development of human resource. The ministry is divided into two departments. Department of School of Education and Literacy deals with primary and secondary education, adult education and literacy. Department of Higher Education, which deals with university education, technical education, scholarship, etc. The erstwhile Ministry of Education now functions under these two departments. As of September 26, 1985, the Ministry of Human Resource Development is headed by a Minister of Cabinet rank as a member of Council of Ministers. Department of School Education and Literacy is responsible for development of school education and literacy in the country. The Department of Higher Education is in charge of secondary and post-secondary education. The department is empowered to grant deemed university status to educational institutions on the advice of University Grants Commission of India under Section 3 of University Grants Commission UGC Act 1956. The department is engaged in bringing world-class opportunities of higher education and research to the country so that Indian students are not found lacking when facing an international platform. For this, the government has launched joint ventures and signed a MOUs to help the Indian student benefit from the world opinion. Structurally, the department is divided into 8 bureaus, and more than 100 autonomous organizations handle various responsibilities under these bureaus. The University Grants Commission of India is a statutory organization formally set up by Union Government in 1956, charged with coordination, determination and maintenance of standards of university education. It provides recognition to universities in India and disburses funds to such recognized universities and colleges. Its headquarters are in Delhi and 6 regional centers in Pune, Bhopal, Kolkata, Hyderabad, Guwahati and Bangalore. The UGC has unique distinction of being only grant-giving agency in the country which has been vested with 2 responsibilities, that of providing funds and that of coordination, determination and maintenance of standards in institution of higher education. The UGC's mandate includes promoting and coordinating university education, determining and maintaining standards of teaching, examination and research in universities, framing regulations on minimum standards of education, monitoring developments in the field of collegiate and university education, disbursing grants to university and colleges, serving as a vital link between the union and state governments and institutions of higher learning, advising the central and state governments on the measures necessary for the improvement of university education. The National Council of Educational Research and Training, NCERT, established in 1961, is an organization set up by the Government of India with headquarters in New Delhi to assist and advise the central and state governments on academic matters related to school education. The top priorities of NCERT are implementation of National Curriculum Framework, universalization of elementary education UEE, occasional education, education of groups with special needs, early childhood education, evaluation and examination to reform IIT education, competitive value education, education of girl child, production of teaching learning experience, improvement in teacher education, improvement of thought of student. NCERT has comprehensive extension program in which various departments like National Institute of Education NIE, Regional Institute of Education RIE, Central Institute of Vocational Education CIVE, and offices of field advisors in the states are engaged in activities. Several programs are organized in rural and backward areas to reach out the functionaries in these areas. The NCERT has been offering training facilities, usually through attachment programs and participation in workshops, to education workers of other countries. The NCERT publishes textbooks for school subjects from classes 1 to 12 and publishes books that are used in government and private schools across India that follow the CBSE curriculum. The Constitution of India ensures equality, freedom, justice and dignity of all individuals and implicitly mandates an inclusive society for all, including persons with disabilities. It is universally recognized that persons with disabilities constitute a valuable human resource for societies. Meaningful education alone can enable them to face the challenges of life effectively, participate actively in community activities and thus become useful assets. Hence, to ensure the development of people having disabilities, various laws are put into force and various schemes and concessional facilities are implemented. The Section 26 of a person with Disabilities Act 1995 enjoins upon all the appropriate governments and the local authorities to ensure that every child with a disability has access to free education in an appropriate environment till he attains the age of 18 years. The UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, which has already been ratified by our government in October 2007, recognized the Act through Article 24, the right of person with disabilities to education. For realizing this right, the Convention calls upon the member states inter alia to ensure that children with disabilities are not excluded from free and compulsory primary and secondary education on the basis of disability, and they receive effective individualized support measures in an environment that maximize academic and social development consistent with goal of full inclusion. In this context, the Right of Children to Free and Compulsory Education Act 2009 assumes special significance. It provides for quality educational opportunities to be made available to children with disabilities as well, along with necessary instructional facilities and support services including trained teachers. It is therefore essential for us to double our efforts with utmost vigor and sincerity to create educationally conducive environments for our disabled children, as the reported literacy rate among the person with disabilities is just about 49% and only about 9% of disabled youngsters manage to complete secondary education. The National Policy of Persons with Disabilities, para 48, seeks to ensure that every child with disability has access to appropriate preschool, primary and secondary level education by 2020. The government proposes to implement UEE in a mission mode with a clear focus on providing quality elementary education to children in the age group 6 to 14 years. It has allocated the funds for various institutions and at various levels. Table 1. Ministry of Human Resource Development has allocated rupees 31.50 crore in the 2002-2003 financial year of integrated education of disabled children. The Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment has allocated rupees 213.56 crore in the 2002-03 financial year, of which 70 crores is given to NGOs, as the majority of special schools in India are run by NGOs. Almost all the states in India have allocated the resources for rehabilitation of people with disabilities. By and large, these resources are spent to sustain special schools and to pay pension to people with disabilities. Social security. In India, disability remains a welfare issue and is not seen as a development issue. Thus, the small budget allocations are spent on paying pensions, providing assistive devices and maintaining institutions for the care of people with disabilities, etc. The central government directs state governments to spend 3% of poverty alleviation funds on people with disabilities. In addition to the lack of resources available, societal attitudes towards disability are also a hindrance and need to be changed. Government of India and state governments are implementing a number of welfare schemes for the benefit of persons with disabilities. Most of us are not aware of all the provisions and schemes available for the disabled. Hence, there are details given below on few schemes and programs for the disabled. Benefits. Government of India has taken the responsibility of providing optimal environment to ensure full participation of the persons with disabilities. In this context, it has introduced a number of welfare programs, schemes, concessions and facilities for educational, vocational and economic rehabilitation. There are various programs meant for different disabilities. Few of them are discussed below. Travel concession by rail. Orthopedically handicapped persons, mentally retarded persons with an escort on production of medical certificate are eligible to 75% concession. The same is applicable for blind person also. A deaf and dumb person traveling alone, both afflictions together in the same persons, on the production of certificate from a government doctor is eligible for 50% concession. A deaf person is allowed 50% concession in rail fare, both in first and second class, but concession is not available for escort. By air, locomotor disabled persons with 80% disability are allowed 50% concessions in Indian Airlines. The Indian Airlines Corporation allows 50% concessional fare to blind persons or single journey or single fare for round trip journey on all domestic flights. Preferences in allotment of STD PCO for handicapped persons. Educated unemployed persons are eligible for allotment of STD PCOs. The educational qualifications for the applicants are 8th or middle class passed from rural areas, at least matriculation and high school for urban areas. The following exemptions, concessions relating to customs and central excise duty are available to disabled persons or voluntary organizations. Customs. Concessional rate of duty of 50% on specified terms required by the spinal patients and other categories of physically handicapped people. Concessional rate of duty of 15% on tricycles on use by crippled and disabled persons. Full exemptions from payment of duty on specified goods imported by a handicapped or a disabled person for his personal use. Concessional duty of 25% on orthopedic appliances imported by post or air for personal use. Central excise. Exemption on all goods manufactured by institutions for handicapped persons. Nil duty on artificial limbs and rehabilitation aids for the handicapped. Concessional rate of duty of 24% on cars for physically handicapped person. Under the scheme, handicapped children are sought to be integrated in the normal school system. 100% assistance is provided to the states, UTs for education of children suffering from certain mild handicaps in common schools with the help of necessary aids, incentives and specially trained teachers. Children with locomotor handicaps OH, mentally handicapped, educable group IQ 50 to 70, children with multiple handicaps, children with learning disabilities. The children are provided with following allowances and facilities under this scheme. Books and stationery allowance rupees 400 per annum, uniform allowance rupees 50 per annum, transport allowance of rupees 50 per month. If a disabled child resides in a hostel of school within the school premises, no transportation charges would be admissible. Escort allowance for severely handicapped children with lower extremity disabilities at rupees 75 per month. Actual cost of equipment subject to maximum of rupees 2000 per student for a period of 5 years. In case of severely orthopedically handicapped children, one attendant for every 10 children may be appointed with a pay scale of Group D employee. Other benefits. Apart from all the above mentioned benefits, the disabled people may avail the following benefits. Income tax concessions, award of dealership agencies by oil companies, reservation of jobs and other facilities for disabled person, financial assistance to persons with disabilities, rehabilitation schemes at national, regional, state, district levels. There are various schemes and programs at national level which may enable the disabled person to get educational benefits. Few of these practices followed at national level are Early Childhood Care and Education ECCE. It is now globally recognized that systematic provision of early childhood care and education ECCE can help in development of children in a variety of ways, such as through group socialization, inculcation of healthy habits, stimulation of creative learning processes, the enhanced scope of overall personality development. ECCE is a support of UEE and indirectly influences the enrollment and retention of girls in primary school by providing substitute care facilities for younger siblings. At present, the Integrated Child Development Scheme ICDS is the most widespread ECCE provision. ECCE is being promoted as a holistic input for fostering health, psychosocial, nutritional and educational development of children. The government launched the Project for Integrated Education Development (PIED) with assistance from UNICEF in 1986. The implementation of PIED in 10 demonstration sites in rural and urban contexts encouraged policymakers to include children with moderate disabilities in 1992. In practice, children with multiple and severe disabilities were also integrated in project areas as a consequence of the lack of special schools and through the commitment to providing education for all that was generated in these areas. Evaluation of PIED showed higher retention rates of children with disabilities and a positive change in teacher practices. The success of this project resulted in the centrally sponsored scheme launched by the Ministry of Human Resource Development called Integrated Education for Disabled Children (IEDC) in 1992. The objective of this scheme is to provide educational opportunities for children with disabilities in ordinary school so as to facilitate their retention in the school system. This scheme offers financial assistance towards the salary of special teachers, provision of aids and appliances for children with special needs, training of special teachers, removal of difficulties due to building design, provision of instructional materials, community mobilization, and early detection and resource support. The government launched the DPEP with support from the World Bank. DPEP is converging with IEDC and other government and NGOs programs to bring synergy in the process of including more children with disabilities into the regular school system. It focuses on the in-service training of general teachers to enable early detection, assessment, use of aids, and making of individual educational plans. The program covers 60% of child population of the country and spreads over 176 districts in 15 states. The Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment has set up 11 district rehabilitation centers in 10 states: Orissa, Andhra Pradesh, Rajasthan, Maharashtra, Uttar Pradesh, Tamil Nadu, Haryana, West Bengal, Madhya Pradesh, and Karnataka. A similar scheme called the National Program for Rehabilitation for Persons with Disability (NPRPD) was launched in 1999. Under the scheme, financial resources are provided to state governments for initiating services at the district level. The government is using community-based rehabilitation as a strategy to scale up basic rehabilitation services and to create a process for empowering people with disabilities, their families, and communities. The Community School Program is a unique multi-state, multi-agency initiative. The UN organizations UNDP, UNICEF, UNFPA, UNESCO, and ILO are participating in the program with 5 nodal ministries and 9 state departments. Support is being provided for improving the performance of teachers in the use of interactive, child-centered, and gender-sensitive methods of teaching in multi-grade classrooms and to readdressing social constraints that affect attendance and performance of school-age children, mainly girls. The focus is on addressing the educational needs of working children, children with disabilities, and adolescent girls. At present, the massive Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan program aims to achieve UEE for all. Efforts within SSA will be underscored by effective decentralization, sustainable financing, and cost-effective strategies for universalization, community-owned planning and implementation, and focus on girls, marginalized caste groups, and ethnic minorities. Inclusive education is an integral component of SSA, and success largely depends on the extent of enrollment, retention, and achievement rates of children with special needs. The SSA framework provides rupees 1200 per challenge child per year to meet certain expenses. Interventions suggested for integrated education for disabled children are early detection and identification, functional and formal assessment, educational placement, aids and appliances, support services, teacher training, resource support, parental training, and community mobilization, planning and management, strengthening of special schools, removal of architectural barriers, research, monitoring and evaluation, and a special focus on girls with disabilities. Education plays a vital role in our lives. However, education does not mean studying for good marks. An educated person has a better understanding of things and is more evolved. They have ability to differentiate between good and bad, right and wrong. Hence, it is the foremost responsibility of society to educate its citizen, and its responsibility becomes even more crucial if the citizens we are talking about are special in terms of their needs and requirements. These special people include people who are visually impaired, hearing impaired, physically handicapped, locomotor handicaps, and are affected by other types of disabilities, physical or mental. Government has realized the need to pay attention to these special children and people as they are an integral part of our society. Hence, to provide them early education, there are various special schools which offer education for special children. Most of these schools are taken care by the NGOs, and governments provide ample support to them. Recently, the concept of inclusive schools has also increased to give them the equality with adult children. To ensure the quality of general and special education, there are various regulatory bodies which monitors the curriculum of schools. All these efforts are made to make the foundation strong. However, considering the requirements of special people, government has offered various kinds of supports, schemes and concessions for their employment and living, rehabilitation, concessions for traveling. Thank you.